Hi, I'm Jillybean Fitzhenry, and I'm excited to share a new project with you, and it is called Candy Cane Martini. I've painted this with acrylic paints, and it's an actually pretty fun and easy piece to do as long as you do it step by step. So I'm going to take you through that process. Let's take a look at what supplies you need first before I get started. I have a variety of brushes here that I've used on the piece. I've got like a large flat brush, a mop brush, a variety of angle brushes, a small round, a liner, a fountain, and a couple of blending brushes. Also, you will need some white graphite paper and a stylus, a pencil, a rubbing tool, which I'll explain that more later. I use that with the tape. You could also use a coin or any other, maybe even a credit card would work as well. A ruler, and some type of a big flat bristle brush. This happens to be a Palmer that I'm using. I like to use a dry palette when I'm painting. I know a lot of people like to use a wet one, but I'm using extender in this piece, and sometimes it's just a little easier to have the dry palette. Some very absorbent paper towels. Viva is actually my preference because it absorbs the excess water or extender better off of your brushes, and a water bowl. So that's about it to get started. So let me move a couple things out of the way here, and I'm going to show you the first steps of getting this piece going. To begin with, I have just taken some canvas paper. Now the canvas that I've painted on is 11 by 14, and that is got a finished edge on it, but for demo purposes I've just got a sheet of canvas paper to show you how I get it started. To begin with, I want to measure off around the canvas, and I have done like 1.5 inches in from the edge. So I've just taken a ruler, measured 1.5 inches in all the way around, and I've used the pencil to mark off top and bottom all the way around the piece. Then I want to set my background image in here. So for the background, this is like the table part where the martini is sitting. And on the actual canvas, I have come up from the bottom edge 4 inches to measure that out. So I would measure the 4 inches and then just draw that line in there to get that. Okay, so that's my measuring, and all this will be in the instructions that will come with the video. Then to start with, I want to tape off those edges because I want a base coat in the background and the table part of the piece. So what I've done is I have taken tape and I have applied it to the edges here. So let me just take this off, and I'm going to show you how I set that down in. Let's get this one up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going on the outside edge of these lines, and I like using the Scotch Magic tape. I really do have good luck with that. If you have another one you have good luck with, that's great. But that one seems to be the best one for me. So I'm going to push that down. And then what I want to do is I want to use my rubbing tool, and I really want to seal that edge of the tape really well where that paint is going to go. I've also got the tape where I had it underneath where I base coated here. Let me just pull it up a little bit so that I can show you. What it's going to do is it's going to give me a cleaner edge to work with. So I'm going to put that back down because I am going to show you how I get the background shadow in before I put my pattern on. So to start with, I've already got one coat of the burgundy on here, and I did use my big bristle brush to put that on. The Palmer brush comes in both a flat or an oval, and I like them both. It's just whichever one I happen to pick up at the time. Okay, so I've got my burgundy on here, so let me show you. I want to take, and I want to get black in the top corner. So I'm going to put some of the black, this is carbon black, that I'm going to put on here. And I'm going to put some burgundy out also. And I am actually going to take a little bit of water and moisten my surface so that I have a little bit quicker time for blending. I could use extender on here, the extender blending medium, but that is going to take longer to dry. And I think that the water is going to work just fine for this particular step. I'm going to take one corner of my brush and get into the black, and I'm going to start up in this top corner because I want that to be the darkest, and I'm going to pull it at an angle. You'll notice I'm going kind of like corner to corner, and I go about halfway. I lift up on the brush so that I'm not dragging the clean corner into that black paint. So I got it about halfway. Then I'm going to stop and I'm going to get burgundy on the other corner, and I will start down, and I've got it lifted up in the air so that I'm not getting the black down in that bottom corner. I want that to be brighter, and I come up and kind of go back and forth in the middle to get that blended, and that's all there is to that. I've done the same for the bottom half. I've put medium gray down, and then I just brushed the black in that top corner as well. So that's all I've done to get this started. Now normally I would be really careful and clean this brush out, but I'm done with this brush right now. So until I have a chance to clean it, I've put a lot of water on it, and I'm just going to set it aside. Okay, so that is our background. Then we want to get started with the piece itself. So what I would do is I would take my tracing, which I have right here. Okay, and I have this on tracing paper. I've actually take vellum or a heavy tracing paper, and I feed it through my printer so that I've got exact drawing here. And I'm going to position that on. I want to make sure that my little background line here is exactly where I had measured it. So I would tape that down, and then I would take my graphite paper and I would slip that underneath, and then use my stylus to carefully trace my design on. And you want to be really careful that you're getting the exact shape of this glass, especially the bottom and the top of it, this bottom little rim here. When you're painting, if it gets off kilter, put your pattern back on, retrace it, and go ahead and fix it. You can touch up that area. So that's how I put my pattern on here. Okay, then to save a little bit of time, I've actually gone and I've kind of base coated some of these leaves into steps so that you can see what I've done. I start with the holly leaves because they have to be behind the glass. And so this first leaf here, you can see all it is base coated with the dark pine, or the pine green. So let me put a little bit of that out onto my palette. And then I also have used Hansa Yellow. That's what I mix for my highlight. Get some of that. And I'm going to start with a 3/8 inch angle brush. And I want to be using my extender now instead of water. So I usually take a little cup and I pour my extender in there. And you don't need a whole lot, just enough to fill the bottom of that cup. And this allows your paint to stay open a little bit longer so that it's not quite so fast to dry. And I'm going to just kind of pat that off on my palette because I want it to stay in the brush, but I don't want it dripping wet. And in order to highlight, I would take and completely load this brush first with my dark green, but I don't want a lot on there. I want it thin. So I'm patting that into the bristles, and I'm kind of patting the extra off, but I want to stay in one little section. So you can't really see any big clump of paint on there. Then on the long tip, I'm going to dip about halfway into that yellow and blend just a little bit on each side on my palette. So I've got kind of a dirty green brush. And then on these little edges, I'm going to go all the way around the edges. If it gets too yellow, stop and just swipe a little bit more green onto the brush. And you're just going to go all the way around the outside edges of these holly leaves to begin with. So I'm going to go through and get all that on. And you can see I'm just kind of brushing and blending. Pull that down. So all the outside edges get this first step. If you get too yellow, you could always go back and put a little wash or a little thin layer of the green over the entire thing. But you do want enough so that these leaves will stand out. And by loading the brush completely with the green to begin with, it allowed me to kind of get an in-between color because that yellow is a very bright color. Okay, so I have my first step on here. Then what I want to do is I want to get just a little bit more of that extender because I can feel it's getting dry. If I have little droplets on my palette, that's a good place to reload the brush. I'll get a little bit more green mixed into that brush. So you see, I haven't had to rinse it in water yet. I'm just working with this dirty brush. I'm going to load it with the yellow again and just carefully blend a little bit on each side. Get the extra off. Now what I want to do is I want to get like a little layer or a little area on each leaf that has a little bit brighter highlight on it. So I'm just going to pick this spot right here and I'm going to pull that color down a little bit closer to my center and fatten that area up a little bit and really get that color going in there. Okay, all right, then I'll stop and use my blender brush to just softly catch those outside edges and blend away any harsh line. Okay, so let's see that one more time. Dirty brush, I've got the green, I've got the yellow, blend that, and pick a spot on this other leaf and really get a little bit brighter highlight, kind of pull it a little bit more towards the center. And then take your blending brush and just softly catch that little edge. I'm not going into the middle of my color area. I just want to catch that outside edge to soften and blend it. It's almost like you're working with oils. I just love being able to do this with the acrylics though, because they do dry a little bit faster. Okay, so that was my first step. You'll also, with the video, you will be getting, your step-by-step photos. So you'll see I started just with the base coating, and then I did my highlights. And then the next step then will be getting some shadows in there. So let me show you that next. Okay, so this time I am going to rinse my brush in water. I'm going to blot it totally off on my paper towel. And I'm going to reload it with extender, but I kind of pat the extra off on my palette. Okay, if I've really got a lot on there, I might dab it on my paper towel. It depends on your area. Sometimes some areas are drier than others, so you've got to kind of play with it a little bit. Now I want kind of a dark green, so I'm going to load this long tip on the same 3/8 inch angle brush with, I'm picking up a little bit of green and a little bit of the black. I want like a dark green, but and that black is a lot, so it's probably a little more green than black. And I just brush mixed it, but I only want it on that long corner. Then I'm going to come through and I'm going to do the next step here. You can see where there's little shadows coming in. And so the long tip is pointing towards the center of my leaf, and I'm going to kind of come parallel to where that center vein would be, and then I stop and pick up, pull another little stroke, stop and pick up. And what that does is it kind of gives you the beginning of some little vein lines where you have that empty area. So you can quickly get those in. And I'm going to do that on both sides. So I do want my piece to be dry by that time. Pick up a little bit more paint here. Okay, now I also want them to be at like a 45-degree angle. So when I'm pulling, I'm going to be pulling, and I want to do a little less on top of the area that I have my main highlight. So maybe lift that brush up a little bit. And so it kind of gives me the impression. You always have the option of being able to soften or blend with your blending brush to smooth that out just a little bit. Okay. And I would wait to do this step after my highlights are dry. You can certainly take a hair dryer and speed up the drying time just a little bit. And I know mine is still wet. I'm going to just be a little careful there if I can, just so that I can get this. I just need to angle this just a little better for my hand. So at an angle, you're pulling parallel to the vein line. You're leaving a little space in between for your veins, and just pulling all the way down that vein on both sides of the leaf. And if you needed to take a little chalk pencil and give yourself a little help with where those angles are of the brush, you certainly could do that. Just make sure that your leaf is dry. All right, so now I've got my shadows in there. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a little bit brighter highlight. So I'm going to rinse this brush off, and I'm going to switch to my liner brush this time. So I've got my little script liner. This is like a 20-aught, so it's very little. I'm going to dip it in the extender because I want to be able to soften the line that I'm going to be making. Now I'm going to make a little bit lighter yellow than that Hansa yellow, so I'm going to get a little white out here. And I want to mix it about half and half, and I just brush mix, so I just pick up some yellow and pick up some white, and it's about half and half. I just wanted somewhere in between the two there. And I'm actually going to take and mix a little bit of extender in there to begin with also. I want loose paint so I can get a thin line. And the outside edges, it's going to be 2 steps to the highlight. So the very first step is I am going to go around the outside edge. I'm going to put this line right on the edge and kind of taper it towards that center. I'm going to stop and I'm going to take my smaller blending brush, and pointing it towards the color, I'm just going to softly catch that edge so that it no longer looks quite so outlined. It just softens that color right in. And these holly leaves do have a really bright edge on them. So it's not necessarily just a highlight, it's also the actual coloring of the edge. And if you wipe off too much, go back, put a little bit more on, try it again. Now, if your paint is very dry, another option is dip your blender into the extender, but totally wipe that excess off. If you're having trouble blending, that'll help give you a little more moisture to blend and soften those edges. Okay, so let's just get it all the way around this one. And if you're drying quickly, only do a couple scallops at a time. But I've got quite a bit of extender in here, so I think I'll be okay. And just soften those edges. Another option to soften the edges would maybe be just take it like a number 2 filbert if you don't have a blending brush. Number 2 filbert would work also. And I always start out testing it dry first, and then if that doesn't work, then I would wet it with extender. Now I'm also, when I clean this, I want to take and go in a circle on my paper towel here so that after I've pulled, I'm getting it dirty with paint, and I don't want to keep pushing that paint into my other areas. So I stop and kind of do a circle motion to clean that blending brush. Let's get just a little bit more on this edge. Okay, and soften just a little more. All right, then I also want to do the center vein and a couple of a little fatter in the middle, and then kind of lift up. And then wherever your little breaks in your between your shadow areas, we'll get some little lines in there as well. Okay, but I'm going to soften the ending tips with my blender brush so I don't have quite such a sharp edge on any of those little lines. Okay, then I have one more lighter color that I want to add, and that is going to be a little bit more of the white into the yellow, and catch just a couple areas with a little bit brighter highlight. I don't want it pure white. I still want that to have some yellow in it. I still have extender that was in my yellow, so I didn't add any more because it actually feels pretty loose for me. So let's maybe do this front edge here. Let's get a little bit brighter, and I'm not going to do all the edges. I'm just going to hit a couple spots. So when you look at your photo or you look at the finished painting, take and really try to pick out just those brightest areas to add the white, or that really pale yellow. And I also want to put it right in the center of the vein. Let that pop just a little bit more, and just gently, gently drag the tip out from there so you can't really see where I have left off with that. Okay, and I'm going to do that for every holly leaf. I'm going to do the shadow, the highlights, and pick out the brighter ones. Okay, so then the next step is to do your berries. Now on the berries, what I've done is I have base coated them in with the burgundy, and I used a number 2 brush and base coated those in. Now I want to start with my highlights. So if you look at this berry, you're going to see that I've got a little bit of kind of a reddish color going on in there. To begin with, what I want to do is I want to get a little bit of extender on my round brush, but I wipe it all off on the palette, and I'm going to brush it on these berries. And I'll do that next one too, because then I can show you the next step on there as well. So I might as well, I think I'll get them all here. Okay. All right. And I want to start with Naphthol Red Light for my first color. And I don't need much of it. And I'm going to keep my little blending brush handy. So I still have extender in my round brush, but not a lot. I want it kind of blotted off. I'm going to pick up a little bit of this Naphthol Red Light, and I'm going to put it in a fairly large circle inside of the berry. And you may need to do a couple coats on this, because sometimes as it dries it kind of disappears, and you might need to do it a little bit brighter. I'll get both of those berries. To start with, you may want to do just one berry at a time so that you get it blended the way it needs to be. I'm just going to take my blending brush and just gently kind of tap. Not a big stipple, I'm not pouncing, I'm just gently catching that outer edge so it's no longer a sharp edge. I don't want to go in the middle because then I'd be removing the color. So I just want to soften that outside edge to get those highlights. So that's the first highlight. Okay, now I am going to go put just a little bit more on this one that I had already done so it brightens one more time. And then I'm going to add my next color in there. Okay, so I'm just going to wipe my brush off on the paper towel. I don't need to clean it in water. So I'm going to use that round brush again. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the Hansa yellow this time, and I'm going to go in the dead center and kind of pat that in the dead center of the berry. Get just a little bit more. And what happens when the yellow and the red mix, it does become more orange. And just gently try to catch. You're hardly touching the surface, because if you touch too much, you're going to lose the color. But if you do, just go back, add a little bit more on there. I'm putting it on a little bit thicker so that it'll stand out. Get that on there. And you know, it doesn't always have to be totally smooth. It's nice sometimes to see the brush strokes in your painting. Get that tapped in a little bit more. Okay, then I would add, I'll just wipe it on the towel, then I would add my brightest white. So just a little bit of white, and just try to catch the dead center again, kind of tap that in a little bit more. It's not quite coming off my brush. Just kind of tap that in. And you can leave it, or if you get it too big, you could just take and just try and dab a little bit on an edge. Okay. All right, so let me go back to this front berry here. I've got the red on there already. I'm going to get the yellow in the middle. I'm going to blend that. Just kind of tap that edge, just gentle, take your time. Clean that brush off. If you pick up the paint, you got to stop and clean that brush on your paper towel. And just a touch more yellow in there, I think, because you want those to pop. You want those to be nice and dramatic color. And then a little bit of white in the very center of that. And just gently kind of catch the edge. Wipe your brush on the towel, because you're picking color up every time you touch the wet paint, and you don't want to just keep spreading it. Okay, so then you'll notice that I've also got two more things left. There's a little inner area on a couple of the berries, and then there's also this little reflected highlight on the dark side of every berry. So the reflected highlight, let me show you that first. I'm going to take that mix of yellow and white on my liner brush, and I'm going to do a thin line on the outside edge of the berry off to the left, and that'll be on every berry. Now you have a choice. You can either use your blender brush, or you can use your round. You could actually take your round and pinch it so that it's flat, and take the corner and just barely catch the edge of that reflected highlight on the inside edge of the line, so that it's softened on that inside edge. You don't want to see where you stop. And that helps to pop those berries out a little bit more. Okay? So then for the little black area, you can just take the black paint, and it's almost like a little star shape. So you kind of touch down, make a dot. You kind of go up for the head, side to side for some arms, and down for some legs. So it looks like a little star, but it's not a perfect star. And then I also want to get just a little touch. I've kind of wiped it off on the paper towel. Get a little tiny touch of this yellow mix, and I'm just going to catch a couple edges on two sides just to make that pop out just a little bit more. And so that's it for the berries. Okay, now all this has to be done because our glass is coming over it. So then the next step that I would do would be to do the candy canes. Now the candy canes were base coated with the medium white, and then I took the naphthol red to do the stripes. So it took 2 coats, and I just used my round brush to base coat those in. So let me show you the stripes. Now the stripes don't need to have extender because we're not blending them. I only use the extender if I'm going to be blending. Otherwise it can be water to loosen your paint if you need to loosen it. So I'm taking my number 2 round brush and I'm just kind of pulling at an angle. I'm going up the candy cane and it's kind of like a 45-degree angle. I'm not tracing all these stripes on. I think it's just easier to go for it. Once you get one going, it makes it easier. Then when you get to this curve, I start curving it a little bit more so that I'm going to make it a little skinnier at the beginning, little skinnier, and then a little fatter to the outside to get those stripes going all the way around. There's no set rule how many stripes you have to have. They can be all different colors. Sometimes it's fun to add a little skinny green stripe in between, or pink or orange, so just kind of have fun with it. And so what happens is it starts curving the opposite direction by the time you get down to the tip. Okay, so then that is done. Rinse my brush. Now you're going to notice that the candy cane that's up in the glass here, it's shifted because the reflection, when it's inside the glass, it shifts the image of the candy cane itself. So that's why it looks like it's broken up in there. Okay, then there's not a whole lot more to the candy cane. There is putting some shadows in here, and so I'm going to use my medium gray, and I may add just a little hair of black in there. I'm going to use extender in my brush, get a little corner of the medium gray, little tip of the black so that it shows up. It's not a whole lot, and just a corner load. I've got my 3/8 inch brush, or I could switch to a 1/4 inch if I needed to, and I'm going to do the gray on that bottom edge between all of the stripes and kind of blend that. And if you need to use your blending brush to get that center area, you sure can. Okay, and get that in here. Also on the candy cane that, oh, I didn't finish this, the candy cane on top, I'm going to do that as well. Just kind of tap those in there. Okay. Get that in here. But on the candy cane on top, I'm only going to do the part that goes above the glass because I'm going to be putting washes of color over the other area, and it's just not going to even show anyway. Let me see if I can turn my piece upside down here so that I can get a little bit better angle. There we go. Okay, then I also do want to put burgundy on the stripe area. That'll be my shadow for the red stripes. So rinse my brush out, but I always get extender back on it. I'm going to blot that on my paper towel, a corner load of my burgundy, kind of blend the extra off on my palette, and I'm going to catch that same edge of stripes with my burgundy. And I would do that on the bottom candy cane as well. But I'm going to just focus on finishing this top one so that I can get to the glass steps. And then if I have time, I'll come back and do the bottom candy cane as well. Okay, now this has to dry a little bit before I can do my highlights in there, but as long as I've got those steps done, I'm ready to start the fun part of the glass. Okay, so on the glass, the first step is going to be to outline all the way around the glass, and then I'm going to add a few little floated shadow areas in there as well, and some red in my piece here. So let's take a look at the first steps. Because I want to be able to blend this, I'm going to be using extender in my white with my liner brush. So I'm going to kind of mix, loosen up the white. You don't want it so loose that you can't see the color, that it becomes too transparent. Okay, now I'm going to outline the top of the rim, and that I really don't have to blend. I only outline it so I remember where it is, because I'm going to be putting little sugar sprinkles around there. This candy cane martini, the glass was dipped in little candy cane sprinkles before it was filled up with a nummy martini. So just going to outline and try to just take your time, get it nice and even. You'll notice on the bottom I went through where the candy cane area is. Okay, and it doesn't have to be totally perfect because we will put sprinkles on there. But this other area, you want to be a little bit more careful. I'm going to get this outside line. And I'm going to go all the way down. And I'm going to go right through my leaf. Get all the way down there. And this has the extender in it. So now, while that's still wet, before I go any further, I want to take my blending brush and I want to soften that. Now I'm going to add a little bit of extender. I've got a droplet on my piece here, on my palette, and wipe the extra off because I want to be able to soften this inside edge so it's a little bit more fuzzy. So just kind of catch that edge, and especially where you go through the leaf there, we want to start making it look like that leaf is behind our glass. So just fuzz out that edge. And up here as well, if you fuzz it out too far, you can always take a wet brush and remove the excess paint. So if I do that, I'll show that to you. But right now, just a little bit more extender on my brush. If it starts to dry, get a little more extender on your brush so that you can kind of soften that inside edge, make it a little bit more fuzzy. All right, so I'm going to keep going here. And just a touch more extender in there. And let's get down around the bottom here as well. And just go right around those little circles and around the bottom of the glass. A little bit more paint. And it's good to go ahead, you know, and turn your piece so that it's easier to get at a better angle as you're doing this. I'm trying not to turn it too much so that I don't confuse you. But it would be easier to go ahead and angle it. So don't be afraid to flip it upside down and sideways. Okay, and that's about all I'm going to do before I blend. So I want to make sure I still have extender in my blending brush and catch those edges. And I'll be coming back and putting, you know, more highlights in on this. And just as quickly as you can, just kind of get those edges. Okay, so now I've got a little excess paint on here. I'm going to take a little water on a clean brush, and you can see I can just wipe that away. So don't worry if you get little messes. They're very, very, very easy to clean up. Put a little bit more on the outline again. Let's try that again. Just take your time. Sometimes I get going a little too fast and then I end up with a little bit more of a mess because I'm in a hurry. I'm just excited. I want it to be done like everybody else. Okay. Now, I am going to be having a little bit more highlight on this side, so I'm not going to bother wiping that extra out. If I need to clean up that bottom edge, there again, I take a clean brush, with just water, and I could actually take that edge and kind of slice across the bottom of my glass to remove the extra paint. And then wipe your brush off in between. Okay, all right, almost there. A little more extender on my blending brush. And I like to pick it up from my palette whenever possible, because then I'm not getting quite so much in the brush. Okay, all right. Now, so that I don't get my hand in the wet paint on this side, let me show you the next step where I'm getting a little bit more shadows, or a little bit more highlights, I mean, into my piece. So I am going to switch to my smaller brush, my angle, and I'm dipping it in the extender. I'm going to get a little bit of white on that long corner, wipe the extra off. And actually, I could have picked it up from my other area there as well. Okay, so let's take a look at, I'm going to take a look at my finished one here a second. I've got a finished photograph here. Okay, so I've got a little bit brighter highlight in a couple little spots, and so that's what I'm going to hit right now with this brush. Okay, so I've got, let me turn this so I can get at the angle. I've got some in this front corner, so I'm just getting a little corner load in there. And I've got some, let's see, oh, actually it was this bottom one here. It was this bottom one that had a little bit more. Okay, so what I can do is take a little water on my clean brush and just kind of wipe this other one out. Okay, and then I'll get a little bit more of that white paint on the corner, and I want to come on this other side and come up just a little ways. That starts to put the candy cane and the leaves behind the glass a little better. And let's see, I'm going to have a highlight in this bottom section, and so what I want, a little more extender into there so that it blends a little better. I'm kind of flipping the brush, keeping the color in the middle and softening both outside edges. Just getting that going there. And I also want, I'm going to just pick up from my wet pile of white, I also want a little thicker area across the base of the glass here. So I'm going to get a little thicker edge on this front edge. But I want it a little bit sharper than it was, so what I'm going to try and do is wipe a little of the excess off where it comes a little bit too high. Push that down just a little bit. It'll give me a little bit more of a rim, and I'm just basically worrying about that one side. Okay. All right. Then I'm going to, while this is kind of drying, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in my upper area here with my red. And I'm using the Naphthol Red Light. And I'm not putting extender in it right now. I'm going to thin it with a little water because I do want that to hopefully set up just a little bit. So let's get that. Now it doesn't go all the way to edge. You're going to notice that you had another line that went close to the edge. We want to have a little darkness between the red and where that outlined edge is. I'll quickly get that red in there. And this red is going to come over the candy cane eventually. Sometimes I wait and not do it on this first step just because I want to make sure that I keep that candy cane a little bit lighter, but I will put a wash over it eventually. Okay, and you're going to have some of this in the upper area as well. Don't worry if you mess up this little line here. Remember, that's going to have the sugar sprinkles on it. So let's just get that filled in. Okay, and I kind of smooth it out. So I'm kind of blotting it in, you know, any which way, but when I get done with that, I'm going to kind of curve it so that at least my brush strokes will go a little bit more in a circle. And this one I'm going to pull a little bit more sideways. Okay, and I'm going to get down into the glass a little bit more here. Okay, then let's go to the next step. Let's take a look. The next step is 3, and what I have to do is I have to add some lighter color in order to make the red glow. So for that, I'm going to use my lighter mix of yellow, and I'm going to use this same brush, but I'm going to wash it out, and I'm going to put extender back in it and then blot it off on the towel before I pick up my yellow. And I'm going to use this, let's see, no, actually I think, well, no, I do need to use the mix because the yellow itself is too transparent. So I've got that, it was the half and half yellow and half white. Okay, so in this top part of the glass, I want more of the yellow off to this side, and I personally don't mind ridges. I want to see that color. I want it to be brighter. So I'm going to put it on a little bit thicker, and I'm kind of swirling it, kind of pulling out with the chisel edge so that I've got a brighter color in up there. And I'm also going to pull it down the side of the glass and try and widen it a little bit up at the top here, and just kind of blend that inside edge. But if you try to keep putting a brighter red on here with a dark background showing through, red is transparent, and so it would not get bright enough if you don't have this undercoating of the yellow. I'm also going to put some down. I leave little space and put some down because this is reflecting into the bottom of the glass, and I'm going to kind of pull up a little edge on the one side. So those 2 other lines that were on your pattern, they were to show you where to put this. Okay, now that bottom part I will soften a little bit with a blending brush. But that's going to get covered up with red and some brighter colors as well. I also had a reflection in the front of the glass here, so I need to add some yellow up in that area as well. And you can always use your blending brush if it gets too sharp of a line. I don't want any of this to be a real sharp line. Sometimes I can just blend it with this brush, and sometimes I need a little help. I also have another choice. I could use a mop brush if I needed to soften a little bit more as well, so a large mop. So, okay. I want that a little brighter yet because I want that red to be able to pop out. So let's get a little bit more up in here. That's where that light was hitting the front of the glass. Okay. All right. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go over the candy cane with my red because now I've kind of see where it is. I'm going to get a clean brush here. So let's rinse it in the water, but I'm going to put it back in the extender because once I have extender on here, I want to be careful to keep that consistent. So I'm going to get a little bit more red, just a thin layer of it, and I'm just going to brush over the candy cane because that's now inside of the color. Okay. All right, and I kind of came out the side here, so let me wipe that away, because I still want dark between the edge of the glass here. Let me give that just a little chance to set up. Let me go back and get the edge of that glass. So remember, that was white that had extender in it, and outlined, and all the way down through the leaf and into the bottom of your glass. And then I'm going to turn this upside down so that I can get a little better angle, and I'm just going to try to soften that. My blender brush has a little extender in it, and I just want to soften that inside edge, make it a little fuzzier, but I still want a bright white on the outside. Get that all the way up. Okay. Then, while I have that going, on both of the candy canes, they have a highlight going through them. So let me just skip ahead here because I'm waiting for layers to dry. On the candy cane, I'm going to put a transparent line going through the center of the glass with some white. So I'm going to switch to my round brush, dip it in extender, but wipe it on the towel. Pick up some of that white that had the extender mixed into it. And I'm just going to, and it's thin, I want it kind of transparent. And right in the center, I'm going to go all the way through the candy cane. I'm not going to do the part of the candy cane in the glass, just the part that sticks up. All the way through. And if you want to soften that just a little bit, you can. But you really don't need to do too much to that, because I want that to be, to really stand out. And then it'll just have like a bright little white dot in a couple places. Usually try to pick a red area, and maybe even just, you know, pull a little, dab a little, so it's not quite such a dot at the top there. But that's all it is for both of the candy canes, is just that white line and a dot in there. All right, so let's go back a step. We've got, let's see, I put the wash on. No, actually, we're finished with that step, okay. So let's go to step 5 and 6. All right, so now on 5, what I want to do is I do want to put that wash of the red going over, and I'm going to see if I can do it without, I'm going to switch to my larger angle, I think. See if I can do it without losing all of my yellow. If I lose it, I'll just have to come back. So I've got extender, kind of thin down the naphtha red light, and what I want to do is I want to put a little wash over the yellow areas so that this will become a little bit brighter red now instead of yellow. So it has a little bit more of a glow to it. Just careful, I'm not pushing down on the surface at all. I've got a very light, it's almost like I'm up in the air with this, and I'm going to get over those bottom areas too. And I tell you, I tried doing this by using an orange. The orange is just too transparent. So after experimenting with several different ways of doing this, I ended up having to do the undercoat with the yellow so that it would show up bright enough. If you lose all your darkness, go back and wash a little bit of burgundy back into some of the background areas. Okay, so now I want to get the little bit brighter highlights with a little bit more of a pure yellow on there. And so let's get back to a little bit smaller brush, and I'll get my brighter yellow. So there again, it was the yellow with just a touch of the white into it. Okay, maybe a dab of extender in there because I'm going to want to soften this. I want it to still have quite a bit of yellows, but the white helps make it not quite so transparent. Okay, so I have kind of a yellow highlight coming up the edge of the glass here. So I'm taking the chisel edge and just kind of softly drawing that in. Kind of dab a little bit extra in the center and then kind of pull out from there both directions. I'm also going to dab some, let's get a little more paint on here. It was the yellow, the white, a little more yellow. Clean your brush in between if you need to. If it gets dirty, go ahead and clean it. I'm going to do the same thing in this bottom. I'm going to just kind of tap the yellow both directions. Okay, and if I need to soften it, I'll take my blender brushes. Maybe the smaller one might be better. Let's do the little one. And just gently, but don't lose all your pretty bright color in there. And then there was also a highlight in this top section here, so I'm going to just kind of dab that in like a little triangle, kind of both sides. You want to keep that bright yellow in there. That's where the light was hitting it. And then I also have some inside the very top. So let me turn this back around again so I can see a little bit better. Okay, so a little more yellow on the brush. I see a lot of white coming. Okay, so there again, just kind of dab. I'm not really blending it this time. I'm just kind of dabbing that, trying to kind of catch the top little edges of the liquid that's in the glass here, just where the light was hitting it. So I'm not going to really blend too much. And then in order to get that to sparkle just a little bit more, I've got to add some pure white into there. So let's wipe the brush off, get a little corner of the pure white, and just on the yellow areas, just here and there, get a little bit of sparkle dabbed on. Maybe a teeny bit in the center of that one there, and a little bit in there as well. Okay, now I also have and let me just rinse that off, getting kind of dirty, but I'm going to reload it with some extender first, little corner load of the white, because inside the glass you have your highlight here, and then at an angle from there, the back of the glass also caught a reflection. So I've got a little bit brighter white right on that glass area. And soften that out. Okay. I want to add a few more brighter highlights onto the glass as well. But let's let this dry just a second. Let me show you the little sugar sprinkles that are up on top. I actually just use my liner brush. You could use a stylus and get real exact little dots, but I think it was faster just using some watered down white and the tip of your brush. I'm going to put white on first and then a few little red ones. And what I do is I put my little finger down so it kind of balances, and I'm just going to right over the edge of the glass. I just kind of tap. My finger kind of keeps me from pushing down too much. And when you're doing these dots, you want to try and do them a little bit irregular so that you have some areas of the glass where it's a little thicker, some where it's a little thinner. You don't want it to be too exact. And you're going to also come around, you know, on the front of the glass here. So just kind of dabbing all those little colors all the way around. Let's keep going there a little bit more. Okay. Almost. And I like to just kind of sometimes look at a piece for a while, go back, add a little bit more here and there, you know, maybe look at it a day. Something pops out sometimes that maybe I didn't see to begin with. So get all those little dots And I'll do the same by adding a little bit of red dots in there, but I'm going to let that dry just a little bit. So that's drying. Now, in order to make the glass sparkle just a little bit more, you're going to add, let me push this up so I can reach a little more. You're going to add some white, a little bit stronger white highlights here and there within the bottom of the glass. Just kind of dabbing in with your liner brush. I've also got another line that comes inside the glass area here, another little sparkle that's caught. I do want to kind of brush out the starting and stopping of that so it's not quite so exact. Let's see, I have sparkle. I'm going to turn this. Actually, here I have a finished one that I did the step-by-steps that shows without the leaves behind. So let me use that as my guide here just a little bit. Okay, so I want a little bit thicker in that section there. I've got little bits down here on the rim. Just dabbing little sparkle areas. Kind of lends itself to a little bit better on the glass. I've got some up on the top here. Now those top ones, what I like to do is I like to actually, the first one I'll kind of mush it just a little bit and then go back and put a little bit brighter in there. And probably the same, get a couple little more curves here. But let's press down and kind of soften that first. A little off the brush there. Just kind of soften that and then put a little bit brighter white in there afterwards. Okay. So back to the liner, just a little bit brighter white sparkles here and there. And you may want to catch a little bit more, maybe even on the side of the glass. Take a look at your center area, see if you need any more there. Otherwise, maybe a little bit more on this side. There was kind of a reflection over there. Okay, clean up this edge just a bit. All right. You may want to put just a little bit of a sparkle going through the candy cane so that it's part of the glass, but I would soften that so that it's not real bright, but that helps it make it look like the candy cane is in the back. Okay, I've got little sparkles that are up above the glass. I start there again, little extender in my white, and I'm going to start with just like 3 dots, and then I'm going to kind of mush them with the blender brush, and then I would put kind of a dot in there, lines coming up out to the sides, just kind of crisscrossing as many lines as you want. And then I pull those out to soften them because I don't want to see where I stopped with the ends. So I just kind of pull those ends out to soften them. So that's how I make that little sparkle up on top there. A little more extender on my blender brush so that it'll help pull those out a little better. And usually I've kind of messed up my center area by this time, so I go back and add a little bit brighter sparkle dot, and if you need to add just a couple more lines in there, you sure can. So just kind of take your time, play with it. But I would do the 3 sparkles, and then it's just adding, some little dots around there. Okay. I just want to make sure that I get all the elements in here for you. So let me show you That's basically it for the main design. Just, you know, maybe a couple little red spots for a little sugar going around the top. But I want to quickly show you the frame. The frame is such an easy, fun thing to do that I've got going around the piece, and that is done with metallic paint. So let's get this out of our way. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to tape this off, and so I have got my tape, and I'm going to put that right over my design here. Okay, and because I'm going to do like this imitation of a hammered metal, and so I'm going to put that tape down first. I'm going to use my little wood tool here to really make sure that that edge is sealed. Okay, and because I'm going to do the corners separate, if you look at the original piece, you'll see that it looks like there's like little screws that are in the corners, and so I want to tape those corners off so that I can do those separately. Tape those down. Okay, and the silver metallic is what I'm using. So I'm going to shake that up good. Put some of that on my palette, and I'm going to use it really, really thick on my brush. So you're going to overload your brush. I'm going to get myself a clean towel here to work with. Okay, so the brush that I'm using with this is called a fountain brush, and for that it looks like it has a little hole in the center of it. I'm going to take that and I'm going to actually smash it down into my paint, and I want a lot of paint on there. I want it really thick. I'm going to smash it down on my piece, and I'm going to turn it in a circle, and I'm going to keep picking up and making circles. So I'm going to have ridges. I want those ridges. And I start in one spot, and then they all kind of slightly overlap, because when you hammer the metal, you know, you've got the round hammer part that is, you know, you're just kind of going from one end all the way to the other. So I'm just going to do this all the way around, and I did this in the 4 sections, top, bottom, and sides. And you just keep twisting the brush. It's just really kind of a fun, quick way to do a metal frame. And so I would go all the way up with that. All right, so let me clean my brush. Now, I do take the tape off before it dries, because if I don't, what happens is it turns a little plasticky, and then it starts to pull off some of the paint. So let me pull and see, I'll get a nice clean edge where I pulled this tape off of. I pulled a little through there, but that's okay, because I can always fix that too. All right, so that's how I get this part here. Now, for the edges, what I've done is 2 edges have white and 2 edges have dark. And let's see, I have, the very top edge is going to have a dark edge, and then the right side. And then the left and the bottom has the lighter edge. So I can do one of each here. That I actually do just use the angle brush. You could use like a long liner. And I'm going to take black, but I'm going to thin it down with water, so it's a little bit more transparent. And pick up a little bit of my silver in there as well. So it's more of a dark gray, but then I got my metallic in there. All right, pat the extra off, but I want it nice and fluid. And then I start on the edge, and I'm on the silver itself, and I pull all the way down, creating that beveled edge for my frame. Okay, and then just touch up the little top and bottom edges. Okay, now the little corners are kind of the same. I'm going to have the black or this gray across the bottom edge, and I'm going to miter those corners, so I'm going to miter them in an angle afterwards. And the black on the left edge, make kind of an angle there because that's where the white is going to come in. Okay, rinse my brush, and let's see if we can quickly get the white in there. See if I have some left here. A little more water. Okay, so the white also would be mitered. And I think I'm a little bit dirty white. Let's get some fresh out. Okay. Okay, a little bit more white. You want that to show up. So I'm going to do that top edge and down the side. And if you wanted these perfect, you certainly could tape these off as well. But I'll just quickly get those in there. Okay. And then I would do the white across the bottom here for the bevel as well. So white on the brush, and it's thin. And let's get that on there, and then I'll stop so that I can get a little bit closer, kind of cut that in. So I've got the highlight there, and then in the center of this, I've got a little screw, and let's take my round brush, and what I would do is in the very center, I make a circle with the white, just fill it in. It just gives you the impression that these were little edges that were screwed into the metal, and I'm going to take the shadow color, which is the black and the silver, and I'm going to create a center. So the center of the screw area here. And I'm also going to do, I'm going to outline off to one side, creating a shadow outside of the screw itself. And then I'm going to blend that. Now, the blending brush could be used, or you could even just catch the corner of your angle brush here, just soften the outside edge of the line so that it looks like you've got a little shadow going on around that screw. If you need to add a little black edge on one edge of your screw to make it show up a little bit more, you sure could. You get too carried away, just wipe it off, try it again. You know, with the acrylics, it gives you that little safety zone to be able to do that. Let's put just a little black edge on there. So just pick an edge and put a black line. That'll give it a little bit more depth. Now, once these areas were dry, I would actually, and I'm going to try it even though it's wet, I'm going to take, and I want to put just a little shadow because I've got white up against white and it's hard to see the corner. So what I'm going to do is in that angle area, I'm just going to get a little shadow with my silver and black where that angle's in there. And on the gray area, I would use black to do that. Just pick one side, and that'll help give it a little bit more dimension. But that's all there is to it. It's just a quick, fun, easy little metallic border. So that should give you all of the elements then of the design. So then take a look again one more time at the finished piece and see that the results that you get from all of this. I hope you've enjoyed watching this candy cane martini project, and I hope that you do give it a try. Please visit my website at jillybean.net, or come see me sometime at a convention or seminar. I'd love to have you paint with me.